All right, everybody, welcome to the January 2024 edition of the High Performance Homes Team. I'm Steve Mickley, Executive Director of AIBD, and we've got a number of people who are in the room. Like I had mentioned earlier, we're limited to how many people can um, join us on screen. We're limited to 8. So we're going to use the fishbowl rules, and that is that once we get the conversation started, if you don't have anything to say, then drop off until you do. And that way we'll always have open spaces for those who are off screen to be able to join the discussion when they have something to contribute or a question to ask. But we've got a number of guests with us today, but I'd like to introduce two of our High Performance Homes Team's member, Mike Battaglia from Dayton, Ohio, and Andy Rail, also from Ohio. But you know what? I'm not sure I know what city you're from.
Officially Lebanon, Ohio. So I'm actually probably a stone's throw away from Mike. So.
Oh, well, that's nice. But yeah, you're licensed in what, 24 states now?
31 states. So
I'm amazed at myself for just knowing that you live in one of them. But at any rate, our topic that I think we derived from our discussion last month is that we left off with attic ventilation. And so we had a few prompts in the email that went out that talked about why do attics need to be ventilated and how to properly ventilate them, how to calculate the amount of ventilation. I know there are municipalities where I'm located that actually want us to draw where the soffit vents and ridge vents and those little mushroom type vents go on the roof, on the actual roof plans. So, and then they want us to provide a calculation that goes with it. I don't think the rest of the country does that, but
we do in California.
Do you? And but I really, it doesn't take that long, and it's not a bad idea, because it seems like when I go out on site, if there's a place that I don't want them to put a screen vent, that's usually where it gets put. So anyway, Andy, I'll hand it over to you and drop off so that we have room for people to join us.
Okay. Well, a little bit of background on this discussion. I thought we were talking about crawl spaces, but I guess that's a different a different
term. I don't know how I messed up, but in my notes I had attic ventilation.
I think we had you were going to have a guest join us about attic ventilation.
We do, but he's tied up until after April.
Yeah, and that's why I think we were originally decided on crawl spaces. So
well, you know what? You can call an audible if you want. We'll talk about both.
Well, they're. I mean, we could talk. I can easily talk an hour just on crawl spaces, but I think since we all came here anticipating attics and that, and we can certainly talk about that and circle back around when your guest is able to join us. But just a little bit of background about myself. I'm a licensed architect in 31 states, primarily use structural insulated panels. So when it comes to ventilating attics, we just don't do it. I'm on the end of, I do hot roofs. So ventilation for me is something that I don't really, I strive to get away from if I can. California is one of my states I do a lot of the work in. Reason there that I think it's great to not have attic ventilation is because the reason a lot of the houses were destroyed during wildfires is because of embers that get into attic spaces. And so if you just eliminate that altogether, then that eliminates one of the components that has been a hazard for years, and not just California anymore. I mean, we have that same issue in other states and things like that. So I'm going to kind of, I'm no expert whatsoever in ventilation, just because I decided I don't necessarily need to do that. But I'm certainly happy to contribute as to ways of designing to avoid doing the attic space altogether. So I know Mike has some similar experiences with that, and I'm sure he has some opinions on ventilation as well that he's happy to share and discuss. And um, how many here that's on the screen? How many have a similar mindset, or are we all doing ventilation and that's the way it needs to be done, and that's the way we do it, and let's just open up that discussion.
Well, I don't do as much of the SIPS roofs as you do. Of course, I haven't done any in the last 20 years. But for attic ventilation, I mean, everybody knows the downside of not doing it. If you don't have the proper ventilation, what you end up with obviously is moisture on the bottom side of the roof deck, and then it will rain. It can literally rain inside your attic, which then gets into your insulation, which then causes mold, which then gets into your drywall, which then your ceiling's full of mold. Attic roofs using trusses or actually creating an attic, for me, is pretty much simple. I will generally specify continuous vent with the soffits, and then I put continuous ridge vents. So you've got all of that happening at the same time. Some of it is a little more complicated with a hip roof, but I haven't had to worry about calculations on how many 6x8 soffit vents go in and how many box vents go on the roof. Most people in my area, they do not want to use the box vents. The roofer doesn't want to put them up, and it's just another hole in the roof. So by using the shingle ridge type vent, it works fine. Using metal roof, standing seam roof, they have systems for that for ridge vents. It's probably more difficult for ridge vents using clay tiles and concrete tiles, such as in Florida and California. So, I don't know what those would be, how those details work out. But if you don't have the airflow that keeps the bottom dry, the bottom of the roof deck dry, and keeps the insulation dry, you're just creating more of a problem. I had an absolutely perfect photograph, which shows exactly what happens when you close those vents off. And a client a little bit north of me, they closed off the gable vents and they closed off soffit vents, and they kept having water issues inside the house, which also was mold and actually running water. Got up in the attic and found out they closed all those off, and the bottom side of the roof deck was moldy. The rafters were moldy. The insulation was wet. They didn't have any roof leaks. It was just moisture collecting on the bottom side of that roof deck. So once we ventilated that, it all dried out. Of course, had to go through thousands of dollars to have the bottom side of that roof treated and all the insulation removed and replaced. But that's what happens when somebody thinks and decides to do that. Now, on the other side of that, everybody's heard about using insulating the bottom side of the roof deck and putting mechanicals up in the attic system, and that puts the mechanicals and the ductwork in a conditioned space. To some extent, that it works probably really well in some regions. In climate zone 5, where I am at, when they require an R49 for your attic or for your ceiling insulations, a little bit difficult to get an R49 insulation value to the bottom side of that roof deck. And
I'll challenge on that, no one does prescriptive in high performance. So in your case, and in that case, doing a res check or a HERS rating on that will eliminate the need for an R49. My parents' house, who's also in climate zone 5, we did a 4.5-inch wall with a 6.5-inch roof. So it's an R24 roof and an R17 wall with a HERS rating of less than 40. It was a 44 or 42.
Right. So did you use the total U factor pathway?
Yeah. Well, in that case, I calculated, since it was continuous, it was using again, this is using SIP. So this is different than using the spray foam because the spray foam, you can't really consider that as continuous, even though I think some people try to, swing the res check to say that it is, and it's not. But unless they, of course, overblow it and get a continuous, but really the continuous is just whatever the pieces below your member.
Right.
But
you can put a skin, or you can put purlins on the bottom side of your trusses, at the bottom side of that top cord, or you can put purlins, and then that you have spray foam that would go in that gap.
Right, just to give that continuous barrier. Yeah.
Right. But, that basically boils down to construction methods. SIPs versus single membrane roof, or a single assembly rafters versus trusses. And I think based on what region you're in, I think was it North Carolina, South Carolina, where's Harry Booty? He likes putting his mechanicals in the attic and having that attic all insulated and wrapped with foil and the rest of that stuff, which is fine if it works out for them in that climate zone. But that doesn't give your attic ventilation. That does away with the attic ventilation entirely.
Yeah.
And so you're actually, in a way, when you put your mechanicals in that attic and you insulate the bottom side of that roof deck, you've got another volume of air you have to control. Once it's controlled, you're okay. But I don't see that works personally. I don't see it works very well unless you're using like a SIPS type product.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one great benefit of not doing a ventilated attic is to gain that space. In the South, we don't do basements. Basements are unheard of in the South, and even in California, there's very few that have basements. So by moving what you would put in the basement, basically in your attic space, which is your mechanicals in a lot of cases, kind of kills two birds with one stone by not having to do the additional expense of a basement and then insulating all of your mechanicals. The thing with the mechanicals on, putting in the attic space of a hot roof, a continuous insulated roof is, you don't have to ventilate or you don't have to insulate your ductwork. You just have to air seal it. And if you achieve that, then it basically maintains itself in the attic space. So controlling even mechanicals in an attic space, in a closed attic space, is pretty easy. And that once it hits that temperature and that environment, it maintains it pretty well with your continuous air barrier and vapor barrier and your continuous insulation around it.
That's right. Once you've controlled that air, it makes it works a lot better. It's almost like a two-story great room. Once you have that air controlled, it is better off, but you still have a cubic feet of air that you have to control. So, but basically, your ventilation in your attic is, it's the physics of it is really simple. It draws from the soffit into the attic, and the vent through the roof causes the automatic. It's basically a chimney effect. And if you don't have it balanced right, then if you don't have enough roof vent, then you don't have enough to draw from the air in the soffit, to get up through the vent in the roof. So you can pull air in from the soffit, but if it doesn't have enough places to go, then you're going to basically still end up with a poorly ventilated attic and could still run into moisture issues on the bottom side of that roof deck.
Yeah, Randy brings up a question, and I kind of think tangents a little bit about that. He says, what are your thoughts on 312 pitch 11 7/8 I-joist assembly with 1-inch R6 polyiso under the bottom of the top flange, spray foamed perimeter, and butts leaving 1-inch airspace between the polyiso and the roof sheathing and each bay. The remainder of the rafter filled with R38 HD. My initial thoughts on, I try to avoid doing any kind of that 1-inch air gap. I know that meets code. It's code minimum. I think by doing that, the polyiso will keep that 1-inch air gap. Well, it'll be an inch or an inch and a half, depending on your top flange. But the hardest part is, to ventilate a roof, you need air draw from low to high. So obviously you would have to do a continuous ridge vent with continuous soffit to achieve that, because you don't have the continuous opening of the attic space. So you'd have to do it that way. The issues that I've come into, I've done a lot of school projects here where it's been foam on it, rigid foam, and then it's got sleepers and then a deck for the roof over top of it. My issue is, depending on how big your roof is, getting the air to go from low to high sometimes doesn't quite make it. So you could potentially get some moisture issues mid-rise or from there up to the top, because the air will make it so far and it just doesn't want to go up all the way through. So by code, it achieves it through the IRC, but for it's not really my favorite building science detail, but it's something that could be, maybe looked at and certainly maybe expanded on and maybe modified. Mike, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, for Randy's assembly there, he's talking about the R38 high density bat. Is that what that is? And then either way, if you're putting on the polyiso at the bottom of the top flange of the I-joist, you probably want to seal each one of those, so you're caulking that down that entire strip to keep the air out of that and keep the air moving to the bottom side of the roof deck. If the intent is to keep the bottom side of the roof deck dry, it's a lot of work. It's an awful lot of work to do that in that aspect. But it sounds like it would probably work.
I've got a question. You were saying something about airflow being impeded, stopping the airflow. I'm just wondering, you've got convection working for you. The only thing that I could see that would impede the airflow would be an error in construction of somebody trying to squeeze polyiso into too small a space, it bending and hitting the roof deck and basically restricting the airflow. I mean, I can't see any building science that would cause that to fail. Am I missing something?
No, I
think,
Kyle,
Mike.
I think you're, to a point, you're absolutely right. You're not really missing anything. But when you're looking, you have to look at the type of structure. If you're looking at a rectangular structure with a simple roof on it, maybe a gable or two or whatever might intersect it, it's not a big deal as far as trying to seal or insulate the bottom side of the roof deck. As soon as you go and do some of these style of homes that are being built today, and I would be probably just as guilty as anybody, But when you have multiple roof lines, multiple valleys, multiple ridges, multiple other things on it, I mean, the more complicated it is, the roof system is, the more critical it is that the insulation location and the ventilation for that attic is important. There's no easy way to do it. It's because you don't know where all those pieces are sometimes until you actually see it built.
I think it puts a premium on coordinating between the framing contractor and the insulating contractor to make sure that there's not all kinds of blocking, say, put between trusses to carry loads for dormers that would impede airflow.
Correct. You're absolutely right. And as again, if you have dormers and you have valleys and ridges and all these other elements to some of the new designs, to some of the styles of homes that are out there, that's probably one of the things that, and I'll say this, if I was involved with BIM or even just computer drafting, which I'm still pushing the pencil, it would be easy to see that structure and dissect it so that you could see it from different angles and elements so that you can see where some of those problems are in 3D. I have not had the problems. I can see it after 48 years of pushing a pencil. I can more or less see it, but it's so hard to get somebody to understand where those problem areas are without a picture. So, I would say that, if you do have the idea to put the insulation at the bottom side of a roof deck to have an insulated attic, so to speak, you better be prepared to watch how that all goes together. Okay. And you brought up dormers, and that's a construction detail on itself that a lot of people kind of forget about. I've seen people do dormers on roofs a number of ways, but I've seen them try to build the vertical wall on top of the roof structure and then build up. Then I've also seen them, which I would rather see, is the vertical wall of the dormer go all the way down to the floor. And one of the problem areas that you have, and if we're just talking about insulation alone, is that dormer wall that's adjacent to the attic. The attic is going to be, if it's 90 degrees outside, that attic is going to be in excess of 110, 120 degrees. Guess where that heat's going to go? And it's right through that sidewall into that dormer area. May it be a bedroom or just a dormer window. So you have to watch that. So it's not an area that is well covered in any kind of an insulation code. But you have to deal with that wall a little bit different, and air path through that sidewall from attic to dormer, say like on a Cape Cod home, it's tremendous. So you have to watch that extremely close.
I was always taught that any vertical wall that's open to an attic, you insulate it like it's a ceiling. You don't put your wall insulation in a dormer wall. You put your roof insulation in the dormer wall, even if you have to bulk it up because of that volume of heat. Is that not general practice?
To me, that would be a good practice. It is difficult. You can get now these days. You can now get an R49 bat if you wanted to use them, which is a good thing. Years ago, you could not get anything over an R30 bat. But the air sealing through there, not only the insulation but the air sealing, is an important issue. Run the OSB down all the way down to the floor. Put your, seal it. Put put your Tyvek on it, whatever you want to do, but air seal it as best you possibly can.
One thing that hasn't been, I may have mentioned it in one of our earliest meetings, is when it comes to projects and pursuing any incentives, I know all my projects are all Zero Energy Ready Home program through the Department of Energy, which requires us to do a certain level of insulating and sealing. Basically, the prerequisite, from my understanding, has been that to achieve a zero energy ready home, and if there's someone here who has different experience, I'd love for you to come up and talk. This is for your attic. Your roof has to be a closed attic, a non-vented attic system.
Really?
I believe that is to be true. It's got to meet it's got to meet the 2021 IECC and some other prerequisites, and I think that's one of the other prerequisites if it's not already in the code. So if you are pursuing those type of programs or even looking at maybe doing that, make sure you understand those requirements. Something like that could destroy your potential of getting that incentive if it doesn't meet that requirement.
Is that a DOE? Is that Department of Energy?
Yeah, zero energy home ready home is a Department of Energy program.
Okay. So that you should be able to find all those requirements on the Department of
Energy. They actually have a nice spreadsheet that I actually created, a drawing sheet that I included in my drawing sets as a checklist that they all need to meet. They're on different versions at this point. I think they're still on version 1. They've got version 2 ready. But it's constantly evolving even within itself. So
does it have checklist, trade-offs that you could do if you don't have a conditioned attic, but you do have solar panels? Is there a trade-off type of thing like that?
If you have a ventilated attic, I think that's a prerequisite. So, but there are, in the energy code itself, there's you meet the 2021 IECC, either prescriptive or performance. So you can prescriptively meet the 2021 without having an energy model. But I will tell you, you're adding a lot of additional components to a construction that isn't needed. An energy model typically will run you between $600 and $1,200 to have done. Whereas prescriptively, you could have to do the R49 roof as opposed to actually 2021 still requires R60 roof in some areas, which from my understanding, the next version of IECC, they're bringing that back down to R49 prescriptively, thankfully. So some of those benefits of having an energy model done to do those trade-offs, that would be where I would invest the trade-off time is having a performance model done of the project. But I just want to make sure that it's clear that the prerequisites have to be met. Otherwise, you could potentially go through an entire expense of doing a project thinking you're getting the incentives, and in the end, it fails because of one little prerequisite that you didn't think of or didn't see before. So,
that's another good reason to actually hire that energy consultant. They can look at the plan, they can model it, they can tell you where you have deficiencies and help guide you into that right path. I do that whenever I can. I mean, there's a cost there that usually the homeowner or the builder will have to absorb, but I've gone to the event of actually having the houses, once they've been insulated, I bring that energy consultant back out with an infrared and check the quality of the insulation. In some areas, you do not require an insulation inspection, but they can, even if they do, it can pass an insulation inspection, but still miss the down and dirty details. Stuff in the insulation in the corners and around the windows, missing air gaps, number of different things. And in the corners of a house where the roof comes together is usually where a poor area, especially if it's a hip roof. So by having infrared done at that point before the drywall goes up, you can find all those problem areas.
Mm-hmm.
And it's worth a couple dollars to do that when you figure it's long term. It may not be a whole lot of money in the energy bill, but comfort wise, if you know the house is tight and controlled properly, the homeowner is going to be much happier.
Yeah.
But it's well worth the time and money, even if you do the prescriptive method and don't have to go those other paths. But Andy, you're absolutely right. If you're going to head towards that net zero classification sometime, got to follow those guidelines from the beginning.
Yeah, and they're not going to give you money away for free, so they're going to make you get it one way or another.
Yeah.
Megan,
Well, Megan.
You're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
There you go.
Okay.
Yep.
Hello. I have kind of a question, and I just printed out my picture to share. Can I see that? Okay, I feel like I'm
It's
doing a
upside down.
client.
Is it upside down or are you upside down?
I'm upside down.
It's backwards, but that's just the camera. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I could. Yeah, I
No,
think you can get the gist of what I'm trying to share. So, okay, this is actually from energy.gov. It's a graphic for an above deck rigid foam insulation for existing roofs. I have this problem on my house that I have been trying to figure the solution out to for years, because when I go do this, it's going to be very invasive, but I want to fix it right.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys are the best people to ask on this. So every once in a while, I start digging around and looking for information. This is the best thing I've found so far. So on my home, I have a stick-built cathedral ceiling, like my entire upstairs. It's basically like an old farmhouse would be. So it's all conditioned. There's a teeny tiny little bit of attic space where one of my 3 geo units is. So has anybody done anything like this before? So this is this I feel like a news person or like a weather lady. This is I can't do it. This is the rafter bay. And then you're sheathing.
Gotcha.
Yeah, correct. Sheathing and then adding rigid insulation on top of that, and then another sheathing on top of that, and then the shingles.
Yeah.
And see, what I have right now is dense packed cellulose in my rafter bays.
Okay.
And I have it in the walls of my house. I have blocking in my walls, and the cellulose in the walls, actually, it's not bad. In the roof, not loving it. So I'm wondering if anybody has done anything like this. I have to replace my siding on my house at some point, so I'm planning on adding a layer of rigid insulation on the exterior when I do that. But I'm still trying to figure out the roof.
Well, Megan, when I did commercial work, and most commercial buildings are this way, you'll see the metal deck of a commercial building, and then it's rigid insulation above and a rubber roof or a mop roof or gravel roof. It's there's nothing wrong with it. It does work. You still have the insulation. You're putting it over your boards, so you've got extra layers in there. I would think the bigger part is make sure you don't get any moisture down in between all those layers.
Yeah, that's my issue right now on the bottom of my roof decking, because I have that little bit of attic space, and my insulation guy, he like netted the underneath the rafter base, kind of like the sheet rocked and then blew it in and netted, what needed to be open. So that netting has pulled loose in the little bit of attic space, which is a mess, but it's great because it lets me see inside there. And I know that there's mold on the bottom of that because some, moisture's been able to get up in there. So I have wondered if I actually needed to provide any airflow in there, or if just insulating on top of the roof deck would prevent the difference in the temperatures. And I'm in Arkansas, where we have always had hot summers. Now we have cold winters. So I cannot treat stuff for, one or the other. It's all of the above now.
So my answer is yes, I've done that. And
Okay.
in a way that, not quite the way the Department of Energy does it, but we use we call it insulated nail base. So it's basically a SIP component, but it only has the OSB on one side. So it's got your roof sheathing and your insulation in one piece, and then you set that piece down. You don't have the multiple layers of polyiso and all that you have to do, but you're basically, what you're doing is you're creating what was a ventilated space into a non-ventilated space. So that new overlayer is going to be your continuous insulation. And I just put in the chat a link to the roof and wall panel installation guide that we use to kind of help describe that. And being in Arkansas, I can connect you with a rep there that could help you through all those details, not only your roof, but also your wall, because they do it for walls as well.
That would be excellent.
I'd be happy to consult with you as well. Those details are very important.
How complicated is your roof?
Do what?
How complicated is your roof? Is it just a simple gable?
It's not complicated at all. It is literally like the front of it is a 12-12 gable like this, and then the back has like a 10-12. I mean, it's very. I'm drawing a picture right now. I mean, it's like this. Like 12-12, 10-12. Simple.
My only question is, in that, when you add board insulation to a roof deck and then add a nailable surface and shingles, there's a ferocious amount of detailing on the perimeter that's got to be pulled off correctly. I don't know what the finish is like on the inside of your home, but is there any possibility of in attics just going with closed cell foam?
Yeah, that's where I've been back and forth. I mean, the way that my house is zoned, it's like my upstairs is like where my kids have been, and my oldest two are married, my youngest one's in college, and the middle one that's married still lives with us. But when they move out, when everybody's kind of out and we can shift out, I thought I can come in and just take all the sheetrock off of all of those ceilings and get that out of there, remediate for mold if I need to make sure it's really, really clean. And then I'm just at the decking and the rafters and I can do whatever I want. That's been my thinking all along, that I can't clean up some of what's there. I need to redo it. And so I didn't know if I should then go spray foam the bottom of that, or, how should I leave anything open? Should I just go on top of it? And then of course there's the weight. If I'm adding on top of the existing roof deck, what weight am I adding? But I mean, as far as details, when I finally do fix this, I'm figuring it's going to get opened up on the inside. And then my siding, I have fiber cement siding that's certaintied, that is cracked. There was a class action lawsuit that I was never notified of. And the people that did get in on it, they only got half their payout. So I'm very, very carefully looking at what I'm going to do. Probably hardy board and go with shakes because it's already cracked. it can't split if it's already in pieces. But so I would do all this at the same time. So if I need to adjust details on the outside, it's all going to get done at the same time. So
Well, I think the driving force for your project is, you said the evil word mold.
yeah,
So if you've got to dig out rock and conceivably treat the underside of roof decking, you've opened up the whole space. Now's the time to put in closed cell foam, get incredibly high performance for Arkansas, and then rock it and call it a day.
you think so? You think don't do anything on the top of it?
You're going to get all the performance you need. I mean, how deep are the rafters?
They're 2x10s or 2x12s. I mean, they're pretty.
I'm going to guess if you get an insulation and contractor in there, they'll tell you they can put in 6 inches of closed cell and you're good to go.
My concern is finding contractors that know any of this. That was the problem in the first place, honestly, because I was asking around here and nobody knew this stuff. So I did the best that I could with what I had at the time. And then it's not awful. It definitely could be worse, but it could be better. And this is my forever home. So,
well, it occurs to me, Andy mentioned something about a consultant.
Yeah.
You could have a consultant write you a solid specification. You do all the drawings, and then you have the contractors bid that. Then you'll get the performance, and you'll be able to get competitive bids because they're all bidding the same thing.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good plan.
Well, Megan, you made a comment about that ugly M word.
Mm-hmm.
How much of it have you seen?
There's a little bit of a dusting on the bottom of the roof deck, what I can see. I don't have a bunch of it inside inside the sheetrock or anything like that.
But you haven't investigated multiple areas though.
No, I mean that's kind of the problem is you can't investigate it very much with everything closed up so much. So that's what I'm kind of like, okay, in the future, how do I prevent that? And I mean, and mold, it scares me, but it doesn't scare me. I feel like probably most homes, probably almost every home has a little bit of mold. They just don't know about it. And mold, as far as like health issues, is kind of one of those things. You can take one kind of mold and it might, not bother some people and then make one person very, very sick, and then could be the opposite with another mold. So I want to get rid of it, but I'm also leaving it alone right now. And use vinegar to get rid of mold, not bleach.
Well, I think getting rid of what's there to grow that M word is important too. So, So I mean, I put in the chat my email. If you want to send me an email and connect with me, I'd be happy to talk more. I've got the case studies. We can talk about different options. We've got case studies on the insulated nail base. We've got case studies on the spray foam. There's pros and cons to all of them. There's not going to be this is the perfect solution. It's going to have to be something that is appropriate for your project. And I do have some contacts, high performance contacts down in the Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas area that I might even be able to connect you with to even do some investigating and suggestions to that. So just send me an email and I'll send you a link to set up a meeting. We'll get on a Zoom call and we'll kind of talk a little bit into some of those details.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. So it looks like we were able to get some pictures of Randy's down in the chat if we've looked at. I'll be honest, I've never seen this approach before. Seems like a lot of work to me, but I think if done correctly and really paid attention to it, I think it could really perform well. Looks like you're getting the clear ventilation spot in there. Don't see a lot of nail holes yet. in some of these pictures. So, anyway,
Well, that
so
was
I
cool.
wanna, yeah.
Well, the foam obviously is foam is a better insulator than fiberglass or rock wool or cellulose, and it's a better insulating material. And like I said, I think that he does have it sealed around the perimeters, which is awesome.
Yeah. The biggest thing is making sure that you don't have any blocks in your ventilation, top or bottom.
Right.
The nice thing about an attic space is you've got cross ventilation between rafter bays, whereas
right. And
doing
your
this,
single
if you have
assembly.
any blockage, you could potentially. So it really all kind of comes down to the quality of the install in this case.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting.
That's impressive work, whoever did that. That is a really good insulation contractor.
You won't find that around Ohio, I'll tell you that right now.
Not unless you do it yourself.
Yeah,
Well,
not that
I'm
I
in
can.
Minnesota, and things used to get done that way, but the labor is ferocious in something like that. That's why everything is shifted to closed cell foam.
Yeah.
Because then you get the thermal and acoustical performance, but you also get you don't have to worry about detailing a vapor retarder.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing how the blower door tests on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like it'll do what you need it to do.
Mm-hmm.
What are you looking at?
If you go down to the chat box, there's some links in there that Steve
click
was
on-
able to upload.
Larry, just click on the pictures.
Okay.
Just-
Well, I'm not seeing any pictures. Okay.
The chat box over on the right side.
There we
Oh,
go.
okay. Yes, I see that. Okay. Yes. All right.
And then there's. Well, so we'll see. Steve's going to pull up some pictures.
Okay.
I
Great.
think.
I'm drawing a house in Tennessee, and I called an engineer, and just for my structure, and the first sentence that out of their mouth was, you want us to do the radon test, and so we don't have much radon in Texas.
There you go, Larry.
Oh yes, I see that. Okay. Oh, okay. Very well. But I ran across these contractors in the area that were these guys were they're builders, but they were on top of it. I mean, big time. They've got some really good stuff going on. And now then I'm looking at this radon situation. How many of you deal with radon?
We've got it definitely in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Yep.
Okay, well, we don't have it at all. Yes, there's radon all over the world, but there's very
It's a low risk. You're a low hazard, low risk area.
Yes, there was a little scare in Amarillo because there were basements there because of Tornado Alley. But now then I'm in Austin and there are no basements here. This is solid limestone. I mean, you're gonna have to call in some major equipment to put in a basement. Nobody does it. So everything is slab on grade. So we don't have that. So now then,
Well,
go ahead.
Larry, you can have radon in a slab on grade too.
Yes, sir.
You can it can be found. I worked on a large multifamily project. It was a slab on grade, 2-story buildings, and it was so loaded with radon they were actually talking about taking the buildings down.
Wow.
Wow. Okay. Well, my daughter, she's an environmental attorney in California, and so I was talking to her, and she mentioned something. I can't remember what it was, but because they have built over so many abandoned oil wells, they just cover the slab area with some kind of green slime or something that no, I'm telling you the truth. That will not let the methane gas, and I'm sure radon gas, any kind of gas, go through it. So I need to get back and find out what that is, because now this whole radon emissions thing has it's thrown a stick in the spokes for me.
Well, I think you got to be careful about trying to seal a slab to keep methane out. I mean, methane is explosive, if I'm not mistaken. Radon
Yes.
does not explode, but if you've got methane gas around buildings, I mean, you got to exhaust that out of the building.
Sure.
But I don't know. That just would make sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, you can mitigate all that at the same time by sealing your slab and doing an under slab radon fan.
Right.
If we draw
We've done that with, we do that with radon. We pre-wire, we do the radon vent under the slab, and then pre-wire in the attic for that continuous fan that would run in the attic instead of bumping it outside the house.
Mm-hmm.
You don't always need to have the fan, because radon will find its way out pretty easily. But if it doesn't, then you have the fan on, and it'll pull from underneath the slab.
Right.
Do you have to have perforated pipe and gravel and?
So the way we typically do it is, if you do a gravel under slab, you've got your vapor barrier and then your insulation and your slab on top of that, sealing around the perimeters and all that, any penetration through the slab, and then you just do one pipe through the slab into the gravel, and then I do a T with a perforated pipe about 4 feet in 2 directions, so that any gas, because it's going to find the path of least resistance within the gravel itself. It's going to draw and find itself into that perforated pipe, and then it's going to vent up through your roof at that point.
Yeah, that's a pretty simple detail. Energy Star and Department of Energy through Energy Star has got that simple detail that you can download. And I think on the High-Performance Homes library, I think there might be a detail in that you can get off.
If not, there will be soon. I'm going to start dumping all of my details and get them on there. But
it's pretty simple detail. Now, Larry, in Texas, are you doing mono slab or are you doing a stem wall with a floating slab?
I'm doing a stem wall and a floating slab.
Okay. And that either one works. I know, like a lot of places in Florida use the mono slab, which a shallow foundation is in the code. It's in the IRC. And most areas have adopted that shallow foundation detail. That you can still use the same radon vent detail. Doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if the link that I tried to put in would lead you to these these guys right here in my area, and I really do want to impress. I want to emphasize the how good they were with all this air and water. I mean, just really sealing it out.
These are the people in Tennessee.
No, these
Okay.
these people are right here in Austin, Texas, and in Bastrop, Texas. And whenever I put the link in, I don't know why it turned red over in the comment area. Wow, what happened to it? I guess it went away.
Yeah. Larry, I was able to upload it, so it works in there. So
Okay,
I think
good.
the red just identified. Whoa, there it goes. But yeah, that link works. I'm gonna
Good.
check that out. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, but these guys were absolutely amazing. They made me feel stupid. Okay, I'm going, whoa, man. Okay, you guys are on it.
And Annette, you posted there venting under slab connected to vent to roof.
I did what Andy was talking about.
Right.
There's been some underslab forms. I also had some multifamily that had a similar situation, and plumber just puts vent stack to make sure that all the thickened slabs, the thickened footings, the venting goes through underneath those. So yeah, we vent that gravel too.
Okay. Yeah, it's a common detail for it. Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Steve, we're at 5:01. Where are we? There you are.
My frog said when you're having fun.
Somebody is. Anyway. So, well,
Is that the end of the discussion, Andy? You're wrapping it up for this month?
I gotta move on to something else. So that's
Yeah.
that was the time I had allotted for today. It's always interesting discussions about this type of stuff, and
so next month we'll talk about crawl spaces.
we'll go down instead of up.
Next month for sure. And we need to reach out to the rest of our high performance homes team and let them know that we changed the date. It's now the third.
Well, they were there.
Third Tuesday.
They were there. Vicky was there.
Well, why didn't they come on screen?
No, I mean they were at the last discussion when we made that decision. At least Vicky was. I know Kevin was out, but
it's fine.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, we've got a good group here that's willing to come on and discuss. So,
yeah, just got to learn the ins and outs of this new platform. So, thank you guys for bearing with us as we were learning. We can upload images and files, but apparently you have to email them to me, and I have to be the one to do it. Whereas before, anybody could upload files.
Maybe we need to get on a trial or something and maybe play with that, because there's got to be a way to not have to be a presenter to be able to upload those. So,
well, I doubt it. I mean, we searched for high and low to be able to replace what we've been using, and it does not exist. And not only does it does not exist, but the people who bought it have made it to where it's not going to exist. So, so Mike, I've got everybody muted right now. I was getting some feedback from somebody. So if you're not talking, please mute yourself, because we work hard to keep the audio as clean as we can for the replays.
No. Sounds good. Well,
but thanks everybody for being here this week. I don't know, but this has been set up. This is something new that we can do with this platform that we couldn't do with the other one. And that is, this is set up as a reoccurring event on the third Tuesday of every month. So it could be that because you registered once, you are registered for the next
Forever.
12 months. So we'll see. I'll be playing with sending out some email notifications along the way. And if you receive them, then that means everybody is permanently registered, which is great because that way we can know who's really interested in these discussions and not send out emails to people who aren't.
Okay. So those who, if you have any questions or anything, you can send an email, I guess, to me, since I'm the only one of the three of us here. Well, Mike is here. If he wants to field a bunch of questions, he can throw his email address. But you can email me, Andy@moonlightarchitecture.com, and I put it in the chat. I live for this stuff, and I have no problem whatsoever having a 30-minute conversation about a specific detail, because we would rather have things done properly, at least thought through, and make sure that there isn't any, hindsight ramifications that you may not be thinking about. And I'd be willing to talk through that and help in any way I can. I don't promote. I'm on here as a SIP guy, but I have done other stuff. SIP's is just one of those components, but there are other approaches and materials and concepts that come into play as well. So our next meeting will be next month at what time are we doing what day is our next one? Is that
Thursday? That's third Tuesday, which is February 20th.
20th.
Because we're all at IBS on the 27th,
That
right?
is right.
It's a pizza party. AIBD's throwing a pizza party on the 27th.
Yeah.
We're going to be having beers and pizza.
That's right. I'm celebrating my birthday.
That's right. That works out well, doesn't it?
It does. Yep.
I'm going to have to make sure that our friends at Naked City Pizza have a cake available for us. And one
maybe
candle.
a pie. Pizza pie. I'll be all right.
There you go. A cupcake.
Cupcake. There you go.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and shut off the recording and let you guys get back to what it is you do to make money.
We're trying to figure that out.